Today, Sam Bankman-Fried, lawyers up. Bernstein names 2022's biggest crypto winners and losers, and Celo's Rene Reinsberg explains what investors should be watching into the new year. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Jordan Smith. Digital currencies sinking this morning as investors brace for a possible recession next year and a crypto bear market that drags on. By noon Eastern, Bitcoin dropped to $16,800, Ether slumped to $1,200, and Cardano fell to 31 cents. Okay, let's talk about the top stories. First, as probes into FTX heat up, Sam Bankman-Fried and the former CEO of trading affiliate Alameda Research, Caroline Ellison, have hired attorneys. That's according to Reuters, which cited a spokesperson for the FTX founder and a source familiar with Ellison's situation. SBF reportedly retained Mark Cohen of Cohen & Gresser, a former assistant U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of New York. Cohen recently defended convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell. 8 years ago, he also successfully defended analyst Peter Black against an SEC suit. Asked to how SBF plans to pay for his legal fees, he said during a Twitter Spaces chat yesterday that he's not sure if he can. In a one-hour interview last week, the former billionaire said he's down to his last $100,000. According to Reuters, Ellison has hired Wilmer Cutler Pickering Hale and Dorr to represent her. We reached out to both law firms, but as of noon Eastern, we hadn't heard back. SBF and Ellison have not yet been charged with a crime. However, regulators around the world are investigating FTX top executives for their alleged roles in the crypto exchange's shocking collapse. Both SBF and Ellison face civil lawsuits from FTX customers. Next, House investigators say Representative Madison Cawthorn improperly promoted a crypto token. The House Ethics Committee admonished the outgoing representative and ordered him to pay more than $15,000 for violating conflict of interest rules by publicly promoting a coin that he owned and for failing to report transactions in a timely manner. Cawthorn lost his Republican primary for his North Carolina seat earlier this year when he was narrowly defeated by Chuck Edwards. Days after Cawthorn lost to Edwards, the Ethics Committee revealed it was investigating the representative for the potential improper promotion of the so-called Let's Go Brandon coin and other alleged conduct. 4 days after the probe was revealed, the representative disclosed in public filings that he bought the coin last December. He made the purchase 8 days before he posted on Instagram a photo of him with the co-founders of the coin and a caption that said, quote, "Tomorrow we go to the moon." In the same filing, he disclosed that he bought Ethereum around the same time. By law, members of Congress must reveal purchases and sales of stocks, commodity futures, and other securities within 45 days. Cawthorn disclosed his purchases about 5 months later. Cawthorn's office didn't immediately respond to CNBC's request for comment. Last, as 2022 draws to a close, Bernstein is calling out the biggest winners and losers in crypto this year. The firm's analysts combed through different sectors of the crypto industry and identified which exchanges, stablecoins, blockchains, and more were best positioned to succeed in 2023. On the exchange side, Binance was the biggest winner. Bernstein says it's a systematically important and financially robust exchange. The loser is, of course, FTX. Then there's the stablecoin side of things, where Luna was the biggest loser this year after its stunning collapse back in May. But Bernstein says regulated stablecoins like Tether, despite its own controversy, were the most important players in that space. The biggest blockchain player is Ethereum, of course, after its major upgrade with the merge back in September, while Solana was in last place thanks to a stained reputation after FTX's implosion because it chose to, quote, centralize risk. All right, on to our main story. I spoke with Rene Reinsberg, the co-founder of Celo, about how crypto markets have performed this year and what investors can expect next year.
Okay, so I want to start where things are right now. I mean, we're a few weeks removed from the FTX collapse. Investors have been sort of processing that information and prices are down again today. Can you talk a little bit about what investors are trading on right now? What sorts of things are driving the market?
Look, I think we're still digesting the FTX news. I think that has definitely shook many, and so I expect that to continue for a little while until confidence rebuilds. I think to people in the space, it's very clear that there's a lot more that's going on, and there's a lot of real world use cases, but that's much more of an undertold story. And so I think going into next year, I see a lot of focus on projects, on communities that focus on that, and bringing a lot of excitement back to the space. But right now, I think there's just everybody is kind of worried. Is there more coming? What's the full fallout from this? And so I expect sort of the current environment to continue.
Yeah, and I want to talk about your outlook for 2023 in just a minute. But if we're looking at 2022 and some of the trends that have happened here, I mean, obviously we've had some pretty big headlines, both in the positive and negative. You got FTX and Terra and some of the bankruptcies involving those events. But also, I mean, you have things like the Ethereum merge, and you have mass adoption from Wall Street happening this year. So when you're looking at 2022, overall, was it a good year for crypto? Was it a bad year for crypto? How do you look at this year in retrospect?
I would say mixed, to be fair. I mean, I'm an eternal optimist, but no, it was a mixed year. I think, looking back at sort of the last bear market, this feels very different. So on the plus side, we're no longer just talking about Bitcoin or sort of the beginnings of an ecosystem around Ethereum, but there's real, in a way, battle-tested infrastructure that's moving billions of dollars. And one thing I think that is clear to people in this space, but maybe less so to people looking at this more kind of occasionally, is that throughout this entire year and all the ups and downs, the Web3 infrastructure, decentralized finance has held strong, right? Hasn't failed us. A lot of the failures and sort of the key moments you mentioned are frauds are based on sort of traditional centralized institutions exploiting the system, and in many ways the very opposite of why many of us are in this space. So I would say on the plus side, lots of technical progress. You mentioned the merge. You mentioned like a big, with that, but also beyond that, a big shift towards a focus on climate, regenerative finance, bringing more applications that have that real world impact. And we've been seeing a lot in our ecosystem on Celo. But then on the flip side, also a reminder that we are still in many ways connected to the traditional world, right? And so we're still subject to the failures of traditional organizations. And I think to me, what's been nice to see, especially coming out of the last few weeks, is that bigger corporations that have come into the space this year, or have been in the space and are building in the space, are not leaving because they're recognizing that there's that difference. So as an example, I was just on an AMA with Deutsche Telekom, who is building a bunch of stuff, running validators also on various networks. And to them, they recognize, look, this is not Web3 that's failing, right? There's a bunch of individuals, and there's certain organizations that have behaved badly, but that's not the same as kind of Web3 broadly. So I think that realization, is a lot clearer to people than I would have expected.
Pivoting to your 2023 outlook, you mentioned a few things that I think people are going to be paying attention to. You mentioned the developer side of things. You talked about DeFi and its growth in 2022. But to hear it from you, what's your sort of expectation for 2023 in terms of where investors are going to be looking to put their money, or where they're going to be looking for the most growth in the crypto space?
Yeah, and I think the more recent past is actually a pretty good predictor. So just in the last quarter, we saw roughly $80 million in VC investments in our ecosystem alone on Celo. And if I look at what people are investing in, it's a lot of regenerative finance projects, protocols that are, for example, enabling real-world lending, collateralized, under-collateralized, non-collateralized lending. It's a lot of still core infrastructure, so bridging infrastructure, helping developers quickly spin up dApps and applications. But then also there's been a big shift towards climate applications. I think this is also 2022 has also been a year that has brought that a lot more front and center. And you now have consumers saying, hey, why can't we do more? What is sort of, if Web3 allows for collective action, right, then why don't we leverage this to actually have an impact on climate? And so we're seeing really interesting applications and protocols being built. So I'm very bullish on that. I think macro-wise, I expect us to continue to be in a bear market. So in terms of Bitcoin and ETH prices, I don't think we'll see a quick recovery. But the funny thing that we see internally is the small farmer in Kenya that's leveraging a lending protocol, right, doesn't actually care about the price of Bitcoin and ETH. They want to use this protocol because it gives them access to the digital economy, to a global market.
Okay, before we go, we want to tell you about one last thing. Celebrities like Steph Curry and Tom Brady are under fire for their backing of FTX, but Taylor Swift almost got caught up in it too. Sources told the Financial Times that FTX held talks with the pop star as recently as this spring to discuss a $100 million partnership that included NFT tickets and more. The deal eventually fell through months before FTX's collapse because it was deemed too expensive. That's all for Crypto World today, but we'll be back again tomorrow, and we'll see you then.